I'll be dealing with your consumer problems. First, though, do you think it would be better if people kept their cats indoors? That's what an animal rescue shelter is urging people to do after 2 cats were found mutilated in Marlow. Tony Jenkins from South Norwood Animal Rescue says they have information about 450 cases of cats being killed by humans since October 2015. Well, he spoke to Andy Collins earlier this morning about the recent discoveries.
One, we believe, on the 14th of March, and the other one, we're not sure, but it was found on the 23rd. There was half a cat that was found next to a nursery in Marlow. That body was a few days decomposition, so we're not sure exactly when it was killed, but in both cases they'd been cut up by a human. They also killed foxes and domestic rabbits. One of his favourites is leaving bodies outside school gates. 2 people that were arrested, neither have been charged. Our best advice really is to keep cats in, particularly overnight. The large majority of the attacks do seem to happen overnight, so typically someone sees their cat at midnight or at bedtime, and then find their cat, first thing in the morning, sort of often decapitated and sometimes other injuries.
Well, these are obviously horrible, horrible cases. But there is a solution that this animal rescue centre is giving us. Do you think it would be better if people kept their cats indoors? Regular listeners to my programme will know that I have a cat and a dog. I love both. I've had the cat much longer than I've had the dog, and I love him very much. I would be worried sick if he went out. The fact is, he can go in the back garden, but actually he spent most of the early part of his life living in a flat, so he didn't get to go out, and he's not really that bothered. He might go outside and potter if it's a particularly nice sunny day for 10 minutes or so, but then he wants to go back inside and wants to go to bed. He's much happier curled up next to a radiator than he is outside. I would be worried sick for the reason that I've met people who really dislike cats. I'm not saying these are people who are as sick as obviously some people are, that they would actually kill a cat. But I've certainly met people who, in all walks of their life, are totally normal, nice people. You suddenly present them with a cat, and their reaction is, ugh, horrible thing, evil thing. They come up with all of these kinds of awful descriptions, and it portrays this idea that you're living with the equivalent of an animal mass murderer. I've met people who encourage their dogs to chase cats. I've met people who throw things at cats that come into their back gardens. If you allow your cat to go wandering, aren't you potentially sending your much-loved pet into a very dangerous world with some very, very unkind human beings who actually hate them? 08081 008800 is the telephone number. I'd like to hear your views. Do you think it would be better if we did all keep our cats indoors? Trish in High Wycombe doesn't think people should have to keep them indoors. Let's find out why. Good morning to you, Trish.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Why not then? Why doesn't it make sense?
Well, as far as the evening time, I've had cats for over 50 years, and I've never let them out at night. They've always come in and safe, so obviously I know that they're safe. But you still take the risk, when they go out during the day, they might get run over. Like you say, people can chuck stones at them. I've been extremely lucky that all the years I've had cats, to the best of my knowledge, have never been hurt by anybody or anything. They've all sort of died of old age. But, you said that your cat started off in a flat. It would be cruel if you suddenly decided, right, I'm going to shut my cat outside all day when I go to work, albeit in the back garden.
But that's the point with cats, isn't it? And I remember when I first got my cat, and I lived in a flat at the time, and I did my research, and I found that I could keep a cat quite happily as what they term a house cat, an indoor cat.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I came across a lot of hostility from certain people saying, how cruel, how cruel, how could you possibly keep your poor cat indoors? The poor thing will be desperate to go out. I can honestly say, Trish, what you haven't had, you don't miss.
Absolutely.
And he never, ever, when he was a kitten, when he was, I lived in a flat until he was about 8. So for the first 8 years of his life, he'd never been outside in a garden.
So he wasn't missing anything.
He wasn't missing anything at all. And when I moved into a house that had a cat flap in the door, I thought, well, I might as well, this is going to be a revelation for him. He's going to love this. And
No.
to be honest with you, he's just not that bothered. He certainly doesn't ever want to go out hunting or doing anything like that because he's never been used to it. And he's got a lovely life. He's got a really lovely life. He's a happy cat. He's got a lovely personality. So if cats can live quite happily as indoor creatures, is it not, if you're going to get a cat in the first place, a kitten, is it not quite cruel to get that kitten and then to let that kitten out into a very dangerous world where they're either probably going to get run over or murdered by some lunatic who's going on a rampage and cutting their heads off?
Well, I think you have to make the decision before you get the animal which way you want to go, because I don't think there's any sort of 50-50. You either have it indoors or you let it go out. Me personally, I've always let all my animals, but when they were kittens, obviously the first half a dozen times I let them out, I actually carried them out, put them on the lawn so they could have a sniff, and then when they walk back down, almost like a toddler, these are steps, be careful in case you fall down them, that sort of thing. But as I say, I've had one RTA, one killed by a car, but that was years and years ago. It was a lovely sunny Sunday afternoon. I switched on the lawnmower. He was under the bench, frightened him, and he ran straight across the road. And with all that time, one car going past, that was tragic. But he used to sit and do his curd drill. He actually used to sit and look both ways because all the neighbours used to really say, "Look, here he comes." And that was just unfortunate. But
aren't you a little bit worried, though, that these cat attacks are now starting to come closer and closer to home? I mean, for example, Marlow, not a million miles away from High Wycombe.
Yeah, I know, but then you'll always get morons who think it's funny to shoot a cat or shoot a rabbit or
but
shoot
this is not a moron. This is someone who, as far as I'm concerned, is bordering on psychopath.
Well, okay, I use a kinder word saying moron. Unfortunately, you will always have those sort of people about, and so if there are no cats for them to do it to, who are they going to? What, they're going to step up to children? Are they going to step up to dogs or horses or? If they're that way
they won't
inclined,
step up to dogs, but they won't step up to dogs, will they? Because dogs are kept with their owners, and that's the difference between cats and dogs.
Well, not all dogs.
Well, dogs should be kept with their owners.
Yeah,
people should have their dogs carefully controlled, and their dogs should not be allowed to roam. So, whereas cats, of course, people do allow to roam, and you could find that one of these psychopathic lunatics moves into your road, Trish. And all of a sudden, you've got a neighbour who every time they see one of your cats come into their back garden, their eyes light up because they think, oh, good, I can inflict some horrible, cruel harm on this poor animal.
Well, that's the chance I have to take because I couldn't now stop my cat going out because that would be cruel.
Really?
Because he's got his routine. He comes down in the morning, we let him out, he does his business, comes back in, has his breakfast.
If you were to get a new kitten, though, would you keep a new kitten in?
No. No, I wouldn't.
So even with this new risk, this heightened risk, you would still take a little kitten into your home, show it that human beings are to be trusted and that human beings are kind, and then let that little kitten out into a world where other human beings absolutely hate it?
Unfortunately, yes, I would, because again, it's the risk I'm prepared to take. Because I personally think that they should be allowed to go and rummage about and do what they want to do. I know perhaps that sounds awful, but I suppose all my life I've had over 50 cats.
Okay.
And as I say, nothing's happened to any of them, so perhaps I've just been lucky.
Touch wood, and long may that continue. Trish, thank you very much indeed. Patricia in Stevenage, I gather, believes cats should stay indoors. Let's find out why. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, Jonathan. Sorry
morning. Why do you think cats should stay inside?
Well, listening to that lady just now, she's so typical of cat owners. I mean, I don't have a problem with cats per se. I love them. I think they're beautiful animals. I certainly wouldn't condone anyone harming them. But in terms of the people who own cats, I think most of them, or many of them, are very responsible. I don't think cats should make a good household pet. I think they're far more difficult to keep than dogs because I think you have to be a lot more responsible. You have to make sure that if your cat goes outside, it can go no further than your garden, which means putting up an extremely high fence. It is possible to do. You don't see very, very fancy cats like, Turkish bands or really expensive cats. You never see them walk in the streets, do you? It's just ordinary cats. And these ordinary cats are decimating wildlife. They're making people's lives a misery in the garden because they come and mess and use it as a toilet. But the wildlife alone, I mean, there's millions. There's about 200 million animals a year, and birds and lizards, and includes sort of other wildlife that is actually on the verge anyway of extinction. Bats are another thing that they will take. You know, they absolutely decimate wildlife. Now, it's all very well to say, for that lady to say, oh, I'd let them rummage and do what they will. But while they're doing that in other people's gardens, and they're decimating the wildlife.
So what message do you set? Because this is a very uncomfortable message. I mean, I work, for example, with people who have cats and they let their cats out to roam.
Well, they shouldn't.
Well, I was going to say, what's your direct message to people who allow their cats to do that?
All I'm saying is I think that is so totally, absolutely irresponsible that they should, if they're going to keep a cat, it's going to take far more of their time and effort to keep a cat because they're going to have to make sure should make sure that cat is kept in its own ground. Apart from the difficulty that the cat could run into in terms of our busy roads and traffic and get into fights with other cats and all the other stuff, they're also causing havoc in the wildlife, even if they're cats that are living in the countryside. And they're not even, people keep not just one, they keep 2 and 3 animals, which, 3 cats together, they're not social animals.
If you see a cat in your garden, what's your instinct?
I chase it out, and I also have had to make my garden like Fort Knox to keep the cats out, and it still doesn't work. They still come in and they still mess.
So is your kitchen at the back?
Yes.
So if you're standing at your kitchen sink and you're looking out in the garden and a cat comes in, is your first reaction, oh God, quick, I've got to get out in the garden and chase that blooming cat out?
Well, yes, because usually they're stalking the birds at my bird table. I've got loads of beautiful birds coming in, and 9 times out of 10 they're stalking them behind the bushes.
And you see, it's interesting because, Patricia, you sound a very calm, nice person. And you're clearly, you're not a cruel person. I don't envisage for 1 minute that you'd go out there and be cruel to that cat.
No.
But there are people on all kind of scales, aren't there? And if lots of people have the same attitude as you, but maybe are more inclined to be cruel, it's not a huge leap, is it, for somebody to say, right, I'm going to go outside and throw a stone at that cat, or I'm going to go out and throw a brick at that cat, or I'm going to go out and get my air rifle and shoot at that cat. I'm going to go out and try and kill that cat. There are all kinds of people who will do awful things to cats because they, like you, when they see them in their garden, they think, oh, get out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't be responsible for how other people react to them. All I can be responsible for is myself, the pets I keep, and how I react to other people's animals coming into my garden.
Patricia, thank you very much indeed. Steve has called in to have his say. Good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning. What's your view then? Do you think all cats should be kept indoors?
Yes.
Why?
I've got family and friends that think I'm a lunatic because of this, because we live in a cul-de-sac and probably 7 or 8 of my neighbours all have cats. One of them is a crazy cat lady and has about 10 cats and is constantly breeding them. And I don't have any pets at all. I don't have pets because I don't have time to look after them, and I don't think it would be fair on them. So we don't have a dog, we don't have a cat. I've spent a fortune on devices to try and keep cats out of my gardens. They defecate constantly in my driveway. They defecate on my grass. They all think it's great because if we have the garden around, they then come and defecate in all the freshly dug flower beds, because that's what cats are. I mean, I don't understand the laws in this country in regards to the difference between a cat and a dog, because for a dog, you have to have a license. If you take it out, it has to have a lead, and if it makes a mess, you have to clear it up. But with a cat, you can just open the door and it can go where it likes. It doesn't matter if it defecates in anybody else's garden. Nobody seems to care, and that's so irresponsible. I have my grandchildren round, my children. They're all playing in the garden, and all I get is, oh, Pappy, I've come in and I fell in some cat poo, or I have to go out and check everywhere. I shouldn't have to go and check my garden before my children go and play in it.
What do you do if
irresponsible.
What do you do if you see a cat in your garden?
We shoo it away. I spray it with water. As I say, we've spent a fortune on devices that are designed to scare cats away, whether it be the ultrasonic sounding ones. We've tried all different types of those. We've tried like a bird scarer type thing that's supposed to work for cats. It doesn't. To the point that we even bought lion poo off the internet so that we could, because apparently the smell of that, because it's a big cat that sort of scares them and they don't come in, we've scattered that around in places and nothing stops the cats coming in. And it is so annoying. It's unfair on people that don't have animals. Why should I have to go and clean up after somebody else's animal? Anybody that has an animal should be responsible enough to look after it themselves and clean up after it.
Do you hate cats?
I argue all. No, I used to have cats when I was a kid, and we used to keep them inside because we didn't want the arguments with people about your cat has made a mess in my garden or your cat's doing this. Why should I have to? When we had a dog when I was younger, we had to clean up after it. The law states you have to go and clean up after it. So I don't understand the difference. I genuinely can't, because I do get so irate over it. Everyone thinks I'm a lunatic because of it. I'm quite passionate about it. And I just really, I've written to the local MP and said, why can't there be something put in place that people have to be responsible? I argue regularly with the neighbours and say, you should be coming around cleaning this up. I went for a stage.
What's their reaction?
All the mess. They just think I've got nothing better to do with my day. I think they just think I'm nuts, because their argument is, well, how do I know that's my cat's poo and not one of the other neighbours' poo? And my argument is, well, you should all get together and you should come over once a week and you should all go walk around and clean my gardens for me. I've just had a whole new gravel driveway put in, and every time you go out to your car, you end up treading in the cat mess, because they think the gravel's a bit like a sand bin for them. They think that's brilliant.
There will be people, as you're talking, cat owners who do let their cats out. There will be cat owners who are giggling when you talk and are finding it quite funny that you get yourself in such a state about it. What's your message to those people who find it kind of amusing that you are so frustrated by
How would they feel if it was somebody's dog that was constantly defecating in their garden? They had to do it. How would they feel if it was their grandchildren that were coming in covered in cat poo because all they wanted to do was play in the grass and the cats have made a mess? Why should I have to deal with that? It's my land, it's my property. Why should I have to be responsible for clearing up their mess?
OK. Steve, thank you very much indeed. 08081 008800 is the telephone number. Very keen to hear your views on this. Lots of you wanting to have your say, I gather. Do you think it would be better if people kept their cats indoors?
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Relive the days of glam rock.
Later on, of course, I would very much like to hear from you if you have a view or an experience to share. First, though, we've been discussing cats and whether it would be better if people kept their cats indoors. That's exactly what an animal rescue shelter is urging people to do after 2 cats were found mutilated in Marlow. Tony Jenkins from South Norwood Animal Rescue says they have information about 450 cases of cats being killed by humans since October of 2015. Well, it would appear that these awful cases... Do you remember the Croydon cat killer? I don't think they've ever found the Croydon cat killer, but now we're seeing kind of copycat attacks on cats going on here in Beds, Herts and Bucks. Would it be better if people just kept their cats indoors? Would it be better for the cat? Your call, 08081 008800. That's the telephone number. It may, of course, be the same person from Croydon that is travelling to Beds, Herts and Bucks to carry out these terrible killings. And they are awful. I mean, whoever it is sick. They capture the cat, they cut the cat's head off, they stick the body of the cat on people handles, and I mean, it's really, really sick and twisted stuff. But would it be better? Is now the time for people to say, do you know what, I'm not going to let my cat outside. It's too dangerous, too risky out there. Susan is in Aylesbury. Hello, Susan.
Hello. We got a cat from the rescue, a year old, and in the staying in period, the few weeks when you first get them, I put the poo on a little trowel round my garden from the litter tray, and she only ever goes in our garden.
Right.
But does your cat scent around there?
Does your cat leave your
go in our garden?
Does your cat leave your garden?
Very rarely.
Right.
Very rarely.
But
she
sometimes
stays
the cat
in
does.
most of the time.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess if you've got a cat that generally stays in the house and maybe has a potter about in the garden, there's no issue, is there? But if your cat does go into other people's gardens, I mean, I guess you don't really know whether your cat is doing a poo in their flower bed.
Well, I let her out because every morning, as soon as you get up, she wants to go out. She always lets me know when she wants to go. And I just open the back door and she'll run into the border and do it. And then sometimes she'll have a little wander about the garden and then come straight back in. But I put it every day round our borders to put her scent there. I mean, whether or not that's the reason she does it, I don't know. But
well, I'm interested as to why you don't have a litter tray.
No, I don't. I don't want one in the house. I mean, I had to have it, obviously, for the few weeks she had to stop in.
Right.
But no, I don't have one at all.
Why don't you put a litter tray outside?
Well, she just goes in the borders.
But why not have a litter tray and then she'd go in the litter tray, wouldn't she? See,
well,
I'll be honest with you, Susan. I think there's quite a lot about cat ownership, where cat owners, you face them with something and they it's almost as if they've never even thought about it before. You know, if you're going to have a cat,
yes,
then you have a responsibility to provide your cat with a toilet. So have a litter tray, put it outside in your... I'm not talking about for you personally, because you, it would appear, have already managed to control where your cat goes to the toilet.
Yes.
But for other people, if you have a cat and you don't have a litter tray outside your back door or whatever, so the cat actually has somewhere proper to go to the toilet...
Well, I think that's a good idea.
Is it any wonder they then go into your neighbours' gardens and use their gravel driveways and children's sandpits? I mean...
Yeah, well, I think that's a good idea for cats that do wander. But it might be worth people doing that when they first get a cat, what I did, and see if it works.
But why not just keep the cat indoors?
I don't want a litter tray in the house.
Why?
I think they're horrible. I just wouldn't want one.
Well, they're okay.
I don't need one.
Just well, you don't need one because you made the decision to let your cat out. But
yes.
There are people who may get a cat. And imagine people who are thinking of getting a kitten who live somewhere like Marlow, where there have been these terrible attacks. I mean, if you were going to get a kitten and you lived in Marlow, would you let the cat out?
Well, only if it behaved like the one I've got now.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? You can't predict with a cat. They can go, they can climb over fences, they can roam, they can do all kinds of stuff. Susan, thank you very much indeed for your call. This text has been sent in anonymously. It says, I've seen teenagers trying to set light to my cat's face with matches. Let cats be happy outside. Prosecute the humans who torment them more harshly. Well, I've got to be honest with you, anonymous person. If you've seen that, isn't there a part of you that thinks, oh, is it really the right thing for me to do to send my poor cat outside who has a level of faith in human beings where those human beings actually want to set fire to my cat? Is that really kind? David in Hemel says, neighbours' cats come into my garden and poo in the gravel around the garden seat every other day and hide in the plant beds to kill my garden birds. This week a robin and a male blackbird whose glorious song is now lost to us. Bah, says David. Brian says, cats should be kept inside. Then the owners could pick up the disgusting mess they leave for somebody else to pick up. And the killing of birds and wildlife, they are not welcome around my house, says Brian. April is in Biggleswade. Hello, April.
Good morning.
Good morning. So do you think people should keep their cats indoors?
Oh, I fear I'm going to get it. No, I don't think that all cats should be kept indoors. In fact, my cat is an outdoor cat. I mean, she sleeps indoors all night. I know because she sleeps on the bed. It's just right pain because it gets in the way of my feet. But she goes out.
Because
and
you let her out?
She's a hybrid. Yeah. Well, she's got a tunnel and it's a microchip, so only she can come in the house.
Mm-hmm. And where does she go to the toilet?
Do you know what? that's a very good question. When she does it in the house, there is a litter tray in the house next to the toilet, and she does use the toilet as well, because I've trained her to use the toilet. So she does use both when she stays in the house, like if it's really snowy or really rainy. Honestly, I do not know where she goes outside. I know that my neighbour's cat goes to the toilet on my rear garden, because I've seen it.
Yes.
But I don't know where my cat goes to the toilet.
And what would you say to the person who's listening to the radio this morning, who recognises your voice and thinks, it's that blooming April on the radio, talking about a blooming cat that goes to the toilet in my garden or my child's sandpit?
It's really unfortunate. I live in the village, it's very rural. I've also found fox scat in my garden and deer poo in my garden and rabbit poo in my garden, as well as cat poo.
So do you just think to yourself, well, just deal with it?
Do you know what? Yeah, kind of. There's too many cats in my village anyway. There's so many in my village. And they all go, pretty much all of them go for poo in someone's garden. And the best way of keeping a cat out of your garden is actually have a cat. Because cats don't tend to poo in their own garden, and they don't let other cats poo in their own garden.
What would you say? What would you say though to the person who, and this is not to excuse his or her behaviour, because whoever it is who's killing these cats is clearly, as far as I'm concerned, they've got something wrong with them. I mean, it's sadistic, it's awful to do what they do, but they probably deeply despise people like you, and they hope that by decapitating cats and then hanging your dead cat's body on your door handle, they hope that it will traumatise you to such an extent that it will have a devastating effect on you. How would you respond if somebody were to say that your attitude of, well, I don't know where my cat goes, and to be honest, just deal with it, kind of encourages that kind of sadism?
No, that doesn't encourage that type of sadism. The person who does that, the person who's sadistic enough to cause that amount of pain and suffering to another living creature or a human being, is the type of person that would break any law for their own devices. So they're probably the type of person who has the mentality of thinking nothing of punching their girlfriend or punching their boyfriend if they just happen to be female. They have no problem being cruel to anyone or anything. The fact that they manifest it by doing it to a cat is one thing. If they're caught, they should be prosecuted in the full sense of what is applicable in law.
But April, let's look at this in another way. If you were to ask most parents nowadays, would they let their children go and, when their children are very young and very vulnerable, would they let their children go and play in a park on their own without an adult watching them? Most parents would say no, because there are paedophiles out there. There are perverts, there are child abductors, there are awful dangerous people out there, and I don't want any harm to come to my child. I want to be a responsible parent, so I'm going to control where my child goes and who is watching my child. And yet with a cat, again, a vulnerable creature, there's a totally different mentality. It's a kind of this blasé level of trust that everyone out there, in some way wants to tolerate your cat and that it's okay and your cat will be fine, when actually we know now that there are some really horrible people in beds, hearts and bucks out there who look at cats in the same way that paedophiles look at children. They look at those cats as...
Paedophiles have always been around, Jonathan. I'm closer to 50 than I am 40. And I remember when I was 8 having to report a paedophile in my local park.
But you see that
was 40 years ago.
Yeah, but April, if you had young children, would you let them go off to a park on their own now? No,
right, that's really difficult to ask because
you do let your cat.
Is just behind my back garden, and my son has been going to that park by himself since he was about 4.
But you do let your cat, a vulnerable creature that is dependent on you and has faith in you for feeding it, for love, for warmth, for care, you let your cat just go off on its own when you don't know whose garden your cat may end up in, you don't know what kind of weirdo has decided to come to Biggleswade today to cause harm to cats. That's quite a risk, isn't it?
everything in life is a risk, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. My team told me we're still getting lots of calls from people who want to talk about cats. I'll take some more of them. Mark in Bedford texts to say, my cat is 12. He goes out overnight because he wants to. In the winter, he stays in most of the time. I would not keep him in, even if there is a cat killer on the loose. I think it's unfair on the animal. If I kept him in, he would probably poo in the bath like he did last week when we went away for one night and he had to stay in our conservatory with the door open for one night. He has a proper attitude. LOL, says Mark. Thank you very much indeed. It's interesting, isn't it? The attitude of cat owners. 08081 0000. That's the telephone number. I'll get that right. I'll do it at 08081 008800. So we have been talking about cats and whether it would be better if people kept their cats indoors, because that's exactly what an animal rescue shelter has been urging people to do after 2 cats were found mutilated in Marlow in Buckinghamshire. Tony Jenkins from South Norwood Animal Rescue says they have information about 450 cases of cats being killed by humans since October 2015. There are, it would appear, some really, really horrible human beings out there who have a level of hatred for cats that is undescribable, and what they are prepared to do to cats is just unimaginable. But if we are given that information, and I speak as a cat owner myself, is it better, would it be better, if people just kept their cats indoors? Does it protect your animal? 08081 008800 is the telephone number. Iris has called in from Northamptonshire. Good morning to you, Iris.
Good morning.
Good morning, Iris. I gather you live in a part of Northamptonshire where you've kind of had experience of this. Tell me what's happened.
Yes, we've had 5 cats killed near to where I live and various properties set on fire. The police think they were set on fire to get the cats there to come out.
Gosh.
One property, it was a bungalow, and it was so badly damaged that the property next to it caught fire as well. And it just so happens a friend of mine lives there. They think they're going to have to move out while the repairs are done. And the bungalow that was set on fire, the people have been out of there for quite a while.
But have the police actually made that connection? They've suggested that they believe this is arson with a view to trying to flush the cat out through the cat flap.
Yes.
Really?
They've caught someone, but apparently he's out on a tag. I don't quite know what you call it, but he's out on a tag, so they think they know exactly where he is at any minute of any day. This is all connected with the local neighbourhood watch, and they keep us informed. And I was interested to hear, when were these cats killed in Marlow, do you know?
Very recently, I believe, in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, right.
Yeah. The last one was found March 23rd.
Right, okay. I shall let the local neighbourhood watch know then.
Right, do you think it's the same person then, who's been down in Croydon, who's been in Beds, Herts and Bucks, who's now up in Northamptonshire?
Well, the police are trying to connect the guy they have caught with the Croydon cat killings.
Right.
They're trying to prove it, and then I think the idea is then to charge him with the whole lot.
Do you have a cat yourself?
I do.
So how do you feel living in an area where it would appear not only is somebody capable of killing cats, but they're also capable of trying to burn your house down in order to get the cat to come outside?
Well, it's been a real worry, but once we heard that they caught the guy, I thought, oh, that's all right then. But now, it's not all right, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Unless there are a number of these people who are capable of doing this, and maybe the person who in Northamptonshire was responsible for this, maybe that person has now been kind of controlled in some way with this tag. I mean, I note that they're now calling the person the M25 cat killer rather than the Croydon cat killer, because the area seems to be so big. But Northamptonshire is a long way from the M25.
Well, I mean, if you use the motorways, if he had a job where he travelled a lot, then it's perhaps not that far, not these days.
Maybe not. Iris, thank you very much indeed, and keep your cat safe, please. Mrs. M of MK texts to say, someone who dismembers animals for fun is potentially dangerous to people. The best solution is that the police find this person and deal with them. Well, I'm quite sure the police are trying to, because you're absolutely right. There is a very strong link, is there not, between... Don't most psychopathic murderers, don't they very often start off as people who've been incredibly cruel to animals? So the person who's going around killing cats, it's only a matter of time before they start on human beings. Kay texts to say, my cat is more of an indoor cat and usually only comes out into the garden if we're there. It's funny to watch her sitting on the patio, then suddenly run inside to use her litter tray. She definitely prefers to use the tray inside. They will do if they're trained to. Thank you, Kay. Dorothy in Leighton Buzzard. Hello, Dorothy.
Oh, hello, Jonathan.
Hi, what's your view?
I'm a great advocate for indoor pussycats. I have a 21-year-old British Blue, well, he's going to be 21 this year, and he walks out with the dogs with his harness on.
You take him for a walk with a lead?
Oh, yeah, he loves it. He knows the command. Do you want to go walkie with Good Boy Lead? Yeah, he goes. Runs in the kitchen, I get his lead, and off we go. And all the dogs love him. They kiss him. In fact, he's been on Facebook. One of the men walks a large griffon who kisses him and licks him. And, yeah, I'm a great advocate. You see so many cats, Jonathan, not through people being cruel, but by road users being cruel by running cats over.
Well, I remember reading when I did first get my cat, and I decided to keep him as an indoor cat, and I did a lot of reading around it because I didn't want to do something that I felt in my heart of hearts was cruel.
Yeah.
And I read around, and the average lifespan, and you'll have to forgive, my figures might be slightly out because it's what is it, 14, 15 years or so since I got my cat. I can't remember how old.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that the statistic is something like your average cat that goes outside lives for about 5 years. Your average house cat lives for 15 years.
Yeah.
And that's just from statistics, because if your cat goes outside, they just face so many dangers, whether it be complete and utter lunatics who want to kill them, or people who unfortunately accidentally mow them down in a car.
Yeah. Also, Jonathan, it's dangerous for car users. You know, you see an animal in the road, you automatically want to swerve. I know you're not supposed to for cats, but people do.
Natural
and
instinct.
The other thing with my Bluey, he goes out for a walk on his lead, but he comes back home to use his dirt box. He won't go outside.
Right, I see.
I brought him up well.
And I mean, for somebody who says to you, what's your cat called?
Bluey.
Oh, he is called Bluey. I thought it was just because he was a British blue short hair.
Yeah,
but
he is.
But if somebody were to say that you're cruel for getting an animal that people always say, oh yeah, but your cat should be out climbing trees.
No.
What would you say to somebody who accuses you of being cruel?
Well, I did. I had one woman a few years back now who walked up and said, that's cruel having that cat on that lead. I said, well, ring the RSPCA because that's where I bought his harness from. So, you know, if people, you know, animal sanctuaries believe it's okay, well, it's okay. And as far as I'm concerned, he's got the whole of the back garden he runs about in, because I'm very lucky to have a closed-in back garden, and I've had an extra high wooden gate put up that he couldn't climb up there anyway. So, yeah. So, no, I'm all for it. I think it's a good thing, and it saves so many cats' lives. There are the wicked people about, I know, and you're not going to stop that.
The only thing I would say, though, Dorothy, and I mean, I'm with you in terms of if you have a cat and it's always been a house cat, I don't see any issue whatsoever. As long as you obviously have to make sure you're there enough. You can't just leave a cat in a house and never give them any interaction when you see them.
I got him when I retired.
Okay, but what do you say to people who have a cat who, for example, is 15 and the cat has spent its whole life going out and roaming? I mean, surely you would accept that that is cruel to bring that cat indoors?
No, not necessarily.
No? But isn't it like capturing a wild animal and then caging it?
No. Bluey used to be a boy about town, and then he went missing for 6 days. This is a long while ago, 15 years maybe, and he went missing. And when he came home, he then was weeks in the vet because he had both his hips broken right through and a bone sticking in his urethra. So then after he came home and he couldn't walk, couldn't wee.
You kept him inside, and he's quite happy, even though he used to be a roaming cat.
He loves it.
Okay, Dorothy, thank you very much. We must leave it there. We're out of time, but thank you so much for your call.
Travel news.